Hello and welcome back to another episode of Tech Champions. I'm your host, Daniel Beaty, CTO with AuditMax in Jacksonville, Florida. As you know, we take time each week to sit down with thought leaders and industry experts in the field of technology. We love to get their take on the latest trends in the industry and hear about their journey and their mission. We always have a great guest on the show. Today, joining us from Saginaw, Michigan is Shane Emmons. Shane, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Daniel.
You're very welcome. So Shane, you currently serve as CTO at TeamSnap, but I know you've got 2 master's degrees, founded a couple companies along the way. Just start by telling our audience a little bit about your journey to this point.
Sure. So I've done a lot and still do a lot. Spent the first decade of my career after school in the bowels of an insurance company, working on data science, data analytics, data engineering. Exciting, learned a lot. I didn't get to be called the cool data scientist name because LinkedIn hadn't coined it yet. From there, started a code school. Didn't quite work out. We were trying to only charge the alumni through donations versus the students. And of course, that you need to bridge that a little bit longer to get comes up. So spiraled out of that. Started a really giant open source project called Ruby Money that's still running today with about 60 odd million users. And then joined TeamSnap about 9 years ago as a developer. They had just found their product market fit, and I was coming in there to stabilize everything. It was having its Twitter fail whale moments. Helped build the platform, build the team, grew it, became a director, a CTO just over 6 years ago now. And been there ever since, doing all kinds of fun stuff. Getting companies, acquiring them, merging customers, just growing all over the place. Also, you'd said, got 2 masters in the midst of that. I teach at the University of Michigan. I coach other executives. I advise other startups to do all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
that's great. No, it's an interesting ride that you've had, and the TeamSnap application looks pretty amazing. I have 4 kids that have all been in various levels of sports and activities and things that could have used that app. And the motto, the take the work out of play, is fantastic. By the way, it's really catchy. I like it a lot.
It's exactly what we're trying to do every day.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's great. So the pandemic is starting to wind down. I think everybody's pretty excited about that. And there were already some changes. Some of these changes coming, but the events of 2020 and this first part of this year really drove exponential, movement to work from home, right? To people working remotely, and a lot of us are now living in that world. Vast majority of us, really. So, but talk a little bit about the effects of that on leadership, specifically in IT.
Yeah. So, I think one of the biggest effects on leadership is a lot of leaders realizing how little they actually trusted their employees to do their job. Several of us, when we were still working in office, were expecting our employees at a certain time there, and we were confident because we saw them there that they were working. And now that we're not seeing them every day, maybe we see them a couple times a week on a Zoom or through Slack. There's some of us that are recognizing we're not trusting these employees, and we're trying to figure out how we can ensure that they're doing their work. And I think the real shift in a lot of leaders' mind is recognizing that's not the right question. How are we making sure our employees is how can we lead with trust? So I think that's what a lot of shift in leadership has been, is how to actually trust your employees, especially when you don't see them anymore.
Right. Yeah, no, that's really good. And even at AuditMax, our company, we've always been, primarily in the office type company. And there was some hesitation when things first started, like, I don't know, can we still accomplish the same things? Are we still going to be as effective and efficient? And some hesitation there. But now that we're, basically a year later, we've seen almost the opposite's true. Like, people are happier. They're getting more done. And so it's been great, but we have to find ways to make sure our teams are engaged, right? So talk a little bit about some ideas that you have for the leaders out there and keeping their teams engaged when they're at home.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways, and I think the big key is to experiment a lot and find what works for your team. But Some of the things that I've experimented with to keep them engaged is just simple things like starting meetings, not just straight to business, but let's do icebreakers and the get to know you, the things that would have naturally happened in the office between the aisles. We have to actually do those ourselves, and they're fantastic ways to engage employees and create moments of understanding of each other such that later on, when we're leaving that meeting and being willing to reach out to somebody, we have connection already. I think there is also a need to not rely so heavily on stuff like Zoom or Google Hangouts or whatever to connect with employees, but to find other ways to broadcast yourself. So whether that's writing in blog posts or just showing up in Slack, because a lot of your employees are probably in Slack all day talking, or Microsoft Teams, depending on what you're using, and just engaging them where they are. Same thing, maybe you need to occasionally, instead of calling a meeting, just create a video and put it out there and have an internal discussion forum or something. But lots of ways, I think a lot of people have gotten tired of happy hour hangouts. So finding other things like that. Maybe it's just the team needs to engage with each other and less with the whole company. I think that's another acceptance step potentially, is realizing remote is kind of where you work. And if you can embrace distributed, which is how you work, and giving those teams some more autonomy, they will naturally stay engaged with each other because they want to. We all crave connection. So that will happen naturally if you're willing to let it.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you also mentioned, you had a pretty great blog post, I thought, about Watercooler, kind of the Watercooler Talk, which, that can be easy to dismiss, right, as a waste of time and things. And what happened, the Watercooler Talk isn't necessarily business. But a lot of times it is, and I actually had an instance just a few months ago where I was in the office, and someone else was in the office, and they brought something up kind of casually, and about one of our customers, and it turned into a huge opportunity, right? And I'm convinced that probably wouldn't have happened if I'd been at home. They wouldn't have Zoomed me or even chatted me up on Teams, right? So talk a little bit about what you mean by that when you say there's talk about the danger of losing that water cooler talk and how you can avoid it.
Yeah, so like you just said, I would say 9 out of 10 times, maybe even 99 out of 100 times, the water cooler talk is irrelevant to the business. It is just people getting to know each other, and that's going to build camaraderie, which will help your business grow. But what we're really looking for are those moments of serendipity like you just had, where two people that don't normally work together connect somehow on it could be a customer idea, a product idea, who knows, better operations, whatever it may be. And we want to keep those going, and those don't happen naturally without the other 99 that are just incidental. And so we have to find ways. I think good ways to do it right now is you can have, we call them serendipity chats, where people opt in, which we get pretty high adoption. I'd say about 80% of the company, to serendipity chats, where you're just randomly paired up once a week for a 10-minute chat with somebody. And quite honestly, most of those chats are going to be getting to know each other, your kids, your pets, where you live, whatnot. But we have gotten major pieces of this. We actually released health checks, so health screening for COVID, into our app early in the summer last year, and that was because of these serendipity moments we were still building inside of the remote teams. Other ways we do it are in our all-company meetings. We'll do breakouts and randomly scatter folks around and give them a topic, but it's usually geared towards an idea like pitch a new advertising or pitch something for one of our organization customers. And it just gets people's ideas flowing and creates new things, and ultimately bleeds into all the other meetings where they're having this kind of stuff too, that you just try to engage more and more and have more opportunities for it to come out.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have any specific apps that you like for those engagements? I mean, a lot of people have Teams, but I know there's others too that we may not be aware of.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any great apps for it. There's a lot of different ones. Zoom is good, but really anywhere where you can get through, and especially if you can create random breakouts, which is what I like about Zoom for the bigger company meetings. But sometimes even just setting up phone calls. We've had some really interesting ones where we've had all the video off, or people just dial in, and they seem to be more open with each other when they're not showing their face on the screen for whatever reason. So I say just find it. There's a team that has been doing it with video games. They play video games and do this, and they come up with amazing ideas. It's their infrastructure team. So whatever works to connect the team, and again, it's listening to the team and continuously trying something. It's probably not going to be the same thing for every team in the company, but you just have to keep trying and find what works for the group of people that's there.
Yeah, that's great. Have you played with Clubhouse at all, that new app?
We have played with Clubhouse, and we're deciding, is it an externally facing tool? Is it an internally facing tool? Is it just a cacophony of noise and everybody talking about themselves? Like, what is it? So we've experimented with Clubhouse, and it's definitely interesting, and can't quite put our finger on what it is. It's cool though.
Yeah, there's a ton of content out there. Of course, I think as of today, it's still iOS only, but I see that as a kind of an up and comer on that. But so any other best practices, Shane, that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, I think some of our best practices, I wrote a blog post not too long ago, believe on it, but one is recognizing time zones are really irrelevant in distributed work. It goes back to what we talked about earlier about trusting your employees. And one thing that usually kind of the lazy leader will do is start mandating time zones. So adhering to the 9 to 5 in your time zone, or maybe even hiring teams in the same time zone, because people we assume work 9 to 5 because that's what we expected them to do in the office. But when you're a fully distributed company, as we've been for a decade now, you recognize that people work best whenever they work best, and to try to force them into a set time is really limiting the amount of impact you're going to have them have. They might work 9 to 5 if you make them, but they're not going to be as productive. Some of my most productive time at TeamSnap was after my second daughter was born. I was working pretty much 10 p.m. to somewhere around 6 a.m. because she was a fussy baby and she would sleep if she's next to me. And we cranked out code then and made huge leaps and bounds. And as long as you have that open trust and you have ways to communicate and keep each other in sync, you can let that go, and you can just find the butter zone of when does the team work. The butter zone is where people's natural schedules overlap. Then decide what you want to do with it. Is that really for status meetings, or is that for serendipity, or is that for brainstorming? What is it for? You'll have fantastic efforts there.
Yeah, no, that's great. I was just on a call with a client in a BPO company, like an outsourced business processing, and they don't charge anything additional for any of the shifts because they have enough people that want to work all those different shifts. Right. It's interesting that the demand has changed there, and you're right. It's based on kids and pets and our other work schedules and where we live and things like that too. Mm-hmm. So it helps out with the global initiatives too. But so hey, one last question we'd like to ask all of our guests that come on the show: what is one characteristic you think it takes to become a tech champion?
Sure. Think to become a tech champion in our spaces, our collective industries. I think you have to first and foremost understand that every tech problem is actually a business problem, and you have to really, therefore, understand your business. It's a very rare company that is going to just respect tech for tech's sake, or you're going to say, I don't know, we need to upgrade this programming language to this other programming language without an actual business case behind it. So the more you as a tech champion, as a tech leader, can speak to the business case, not only to the business leaders, but to your employees, them speak towards the business first. That's how you become a tech champion and get respect, and then can sometimes shortcut the question of what's the business problem because you've built a rapport there. But I think first and foremost, your characteristic there is understanding every tech problem is a business problem.
Yeah, that's great. I love that insight, Shane. That's phenomenal. And, we've come a long way, right? It used to be, I've been in IT 25 years, and in the early days, it was, I'm going to fix your computer, right? You kind of came in with your blinders on and you just did that one thing. But being able to understand how all that ties back to what the business needs are, I think that's a fantastic answer. But so, hey, as we're wrapping things up, just want to tell you thank you. Great insights on the show today. If people want to reach out to you and find more about TeamSnap or yourself, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. You can look me up at LinkedIn, Shane Emmons on LinkedIn. TeamSnap, download our app on the iOS or Android store, or go to our website, www.teamsnap.com.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming on the show, Shane. We'll be looking for additional blog posts from you in the future as well. Those have been great. And to our audience, I'm your host, Daniel Beaty. Thank you for joining Tech Champions, and we'll see you next time.